Good evening, everyone. I'm Dr. Vishnu Doerga. I'm the past president of the Georgetown Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and also the vice chair of the Entrepreneurship Committee. I would like to welcome you to our program this evening, and these webinars are really geared at bringing to you up-to-date business information that will allow you to make better decisions as you engage in business. And for those of you who are not business owners, the content is still very valuable since it will tell you what's happening in the business community, and it can also educate you on how you can possibly benefit. This is one in a range of many webinars that we've done to date, and this evening we are focusing very heavily on the opportunities in oil and gas. We would all be aware that after these discoveries in 2015, we had a world record time set for getting from discovery to actual production, which started to take place in December of 2019. And very soon, we'll actually complete 1 year of oil production within Guyana. Now, with that as a backdrop, I would like to introduce my first guest. And my first guest is no other than Mr. Syeid Ibrahim, and he's the head of marketing and communication at the Guyana National Bureau of Standards. He's a graduate with an economics degree from the University of Guyana and a graduate of the Australian Institute of Business with an MBA. Prior to his position at the GNBS, he was a marketing executive at Sterling Products and also a marketing executive at the Guyana Tourism Authority. So, Syeid, that's quite a mouthful. And I know this evening you will be taking us through exactly what GNBS's involvement is in both the onshore and offshore aspects of our oil industry in Guyana, or developing oil industry in Guyana. So welcome, Syeid, and I hand the floor over to you to take us through your presentation.
All right. Good evening, Mr. Doerga and viewers that's tuned in this evening. As Mr. Doerga clearly says that the GNBS, the Guyana National Bureau of Standards, has both onshore and offshore roles. So offshore of Guyana, the GNBS, as most of you would know, is the agency that's mandated for the Weights and Measures Act of 1981. So it deals with all verification of weighing and measuring devices that's used in trade. So in earliest 2020, in January, the GNBS was gazetted as the official agency that's responsible for the verification and certification of crude oil of the FPSOs. So these are in conformance with the API, American Petroleum Institute standards, that we would use in terms of the verification aspect. Now, our officers over the period prior to 2020 would have engaged in both theoretical and practical training in the oil and gas sector as it relates to the verification. Also, what we do on board the FPSOs in verifying and certifying the crude oil is no different from what we would do at the bulk terminal or terminal for fuel onshore of Guyana. The only difference is that the volume of oil is greater on the FPSO. Apart from the offshore aspect, onshore, we do by law verify annually twice. By the way, it's a measure acts, the verification of road tanker wagons. So these are the transport of fuel, bulk fuel from terminals across the country. Apart from that, we also verify bulk meters and all petrol pumps across the country. Moving into the legality aspect, we also have standards that's being developed, but these are all voluntary standards as well for diesel, kerosene, heavy oil, and liquid natural gas. Presently at the GNBS, what I can tell you is that we do have a standard that's available for the storage, handling, and transportation of LPG, which is liquid petroleum gas cylinders. Um, if you have been tuned into the news recently, what you would have noticed is that on the west coast of Denmark recently there was an accident regarding a vehicle that was transporting LPG products. It was met with an accident. So although our standard is voluntary, we do encourage people in the sector to follow the specification of the GIS 264-2005 standard, which deals with strictly the specification for storage, handling, and transportation of the LPG standard. Now, at the Bureau of Standards, what I can tell you as well, onshore, when it comes to calibration, the Guyana National Bureau of Standards would have had collaboration with ExxonMobil partners or contractors, you would say. We do provide calibration service for pressure gauges, ovens, and thermometers. Um, as it relates to the pandemic that's happening right now on the COVID-19 situation in Guyana, for thermometers, we know many sectors or many contractors in the industry would use the infrared thermometers to test the temperature of their, not to test, to check the temperature of their employees. So basically, we do calibrate that to ensure the accuracy and the safety of employees in that sector. In addition, we do for calipers, micrometers, and digital micrometers as well. But what I want to focus in this evening is for persons on the business end, the supply chain. So we know onshore that many companies since prior to 2020 would want to be taken apart or taken away a big pie of the from the oil and gas sector, the supply chain to be a supplier in the oil and gas sector. So we know that Guyanese businesses over the year have opportunities and can expand business growth. At the GNBS, we do assist many local businesses, whether they're small SMEs, I mean SMEs or large companies, to become certified to, or accreditation ready to international standards. One of the most popular one is the ISO 9001 2015 standards. These standards talk about customer satisfaction and regulation to have your product or services conforming to the requirements or consistency into the requirements. So at the GNBS, through our business support services, we do provide technical assistance to assist companies in Guyana to be certification ready or accreditation ready so they could benefit into the supply chain in of the oil and gas sector. We also not focusing on the large companies, but specifically to those small agro processors or small SMEs that may want to be part of the oil and gas sector as well. We do have food safety and HACCP analysis assistance to help these companies come to scratch to be part of the supply chain. Well, a critical factor over the years as well is the occupation safety and health aspect. Recently, we would have had a trainer session in partnership with a company from Denmark that would have assisted us to execute the trainers in occupation safety and health, the ISO 45001. So we have the capacity to assist companies as it relates to those training. Apart from the trainer consultancy aspect at the GNBS, over the years we would have also assisted many companies to become ISO certification ready or accreditation ready. To name a few, there's Dr. Balwant Singh Hospital, Nan Prasad, Ashori Insurance. Now, apart from those companies that I would have mentioned, the GNBS also assists in training. So we do also assist companies or business organization in international quality management system training. whether it's related to process mapping, internal lead auditor. Recently, due to the COVID-19 situation, we would have as many as other businesses, we would have decided to take our services virtually. So we are offering virtual training. We're teaming up with the Delphi Consultants Limited in Trinidad to offer virtual training courses to stakeholders in the sector who may want to benefit from such. As it relates to expanding in future, we will be working with a European company out of Denmark to provide training to companies or businesses in Ghana who may want to be part of this supply chain. So to wrap things up from the GNBS end is that we do have consultancy and training programs to assist business to get them up to scratch or certification ready so they can benefit to be part of the oil and gas sector, because many of these business depends on supplying their service or product to the sector that's related onshore of Guyana, which many of our businesses over the years, due to the oil and gas emerging sector, were now trying to get their standards and quality to be in conformance to take advantage of being part of that sector. Recently, as of 2018, if you would have seen when the Exxon country manager, when they had a forum, you would have mentioned there are many companies out there that, that want to be part of the supply chain. And they would have also had a center for business development. But the GNBS is here since 1985, and we have been providing services to assist companies to become, certification ready to the requirements of standards. And that's our role. Apart from our certification and training and consultancy program, we also have a voluntary certification program at the GNBS. That is product and laboratory certification. Now, if you're in this supply chain management and you want to exploit or to be part of the industry as well, if you have a product, for example, currently we certify concrete hollow blocks, PVC pipes, and gold jewelry. Now you have the international companies in Guyana. So if you want to be part of that supply chain, I'm sure if there's any company that wants to build, they would want to have concrete hollow blocks
Mm.
that's, that that meets the requirement or in conformance to standards. Not when you build a building with a block and then next, by the time the contractors are taking the blocks in, it's already crumbled that you would see in most part of the country.
Yeah.
So we do have standards for that. And it also can benefit as far down as laboratories, not just testing, but medical laboratories. We do have national standards that's part of our certification program where medical laboratories in our country conform to, which is the GIS 170. So laboratories, so persons who are within that sector, they may want to do some testing or they fall ill and they may want to go to a lab. You don't want to go to a lab that's not certified or doesn't have any standard or quality that they're following. So you may not get the results that you may want. So
Mm.
with those programs, we're able to, promote businesses that along the supply chain in Guyana to benefit from the oil and gas sector, because the oil and gas sector is all about meeting our in conformance with the requirements of standards. And if you can't be conforming to the requirements of standards, it's going to be difficult to tap into that area.
Mm.
The GNBS is here to assist companies, whether you're a small or medium-sized company or large company. Our doors are open to assist you, whether it's technical assistance or training, or to be part of our certification program. So,
Thank you very much for that very wide overview of what
mhm,
the GNBS is doing and also what you are starting to do in the oil and gas sector, both onshore and offshore. I know that we'll have some questions for you, and I would ask you to be on standby in the studio so that we can bring you back on to answer some of those questions. But thank you very much for this part of the presentation, Syeid.
Thank you, Mr. Doerga.
And now we're going to be joined by Ms. Latoya Jack. But before I introduce her, I would really love to encourage you to send any questions that you may have on the live stream that you're following at the moment, so that we can take your questions and really pose them to our panelists this evening. From the GNBS, Ms. Latoya Jack is the founder of Chronoco Safety Solutions. And then we'll also be joined a little bit later by the Senior Vice President of the Georgetown Chamber, Mr. Timothy Tucker. So warm up those questions, anything that was on your mind that you really wanted to know about the opportunities, so that we can really get you some perspectives on those questions tonight. Now, I will now be joined by Ms. Latoya Jack, and she is the CEO and co-founder of Chronoco Safety Solutions. She's a management professional with an entrepreneurial mindset, a track record for exceeding performance targets, and an attitude of servitude. And she really understands the importance of stakeholder engagement to the bottom line. So I would now like to introduce you to Ms. Latoya Jack, who's going to be talking to us this evening about how our businesses can be leveling up. And we just heard about this from a standards perspective. Latoya is also going to take us deeper into what does this mean from a safety perspective. So Latoya, over to you.
Good evening. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us here this evening. Now, first of all, let's start with a question. Did you know that the most untapped opportunity for businesses to level up for the oil and gas sector is through shifting perceptions towards legacy building and safe operations? I know it sounds crazy because we're so used to hearing about ISO certification, and while that is important, I'm going to share with you 3 points that's going to revolutionize the way you think about the impact your business is having on the culture and economic future of this country. I'm Latoya Jack, and I'm a health and safety professional and CEO who has worked with over 25 companies, trained over 300 drivers locally, certified over 15 safety professionals, and managed projects with over 15,000 man hours without lost time incident. So, what is the relationship between occupational safety and health, building a legacy, and sustainable development at the national level? It's the direct impact working safely has on an individual's productivity, quality of life, and their overall input to the society and the economy. It's a well documented fact that an employee who suffers a non fatal, life altering injury at work impacts the society in real economic terms. I'm talking real dollars. The International Labour Organization suggests as much as $2.4 trillion of the global GDP annually. So I'm going to share with you 3 perspectives or 3 points about the direct impact working safely has on an individual's productivity, quality of life, and their overall input to the society and economy, and how you can impact the long-term sustainability of this country's future and success in oil and gas just by the way you treat with safety in your specific companies, businesses, and your everyday life. So, I know you're probably thinking, what does this have to do with new opportunities in the oil and gas sector? But let me explain. I'm going to show you a great way you can think about this to ensure your actions as an entrepreneur, a business owner, or a management professional isn't compromising the sustainable future of this country and still offer you the option of getting amazing results within your company. So, the first fact to consider: the employee who suffers a non-fatal, life-altering injury impacts the trajectory for success of his family unit for 3 future generations. The big idea here is when an employee suffers a significant injury, he can no longer provide for his or her family in the way he or she usually would, and therefore directly impacting the livelihood of his family, his direct family, and his descendants. This is important because it requires the society to fill the financial void that is created through disability payments, early pension fund payouts, and other social economic stimulus packages. If we think of the employee as a soldier on the front line defending the country from the resource curse that we hear so often about, each employee that suffers this fate takes out at least five other family members, plus reduces the strength of other soldiers fighting this battle coming after him. Ultimately, this will take the country a much longer time to both recover and excel. Not only will we be allocating funds to this, we will also be reducing our productivity as a nation in the long run. Now, the second fact I'd like for you to take into consideration, or the second thing I'd like to share this evening, the implications occupational safety and health incidents have on the educational levels of the workforce. The main thing to understand here is that the priority should be given to the priority that should be given to education within the family and the development of the children is stemming by occupational incidents and or redirected to medical maintenance when life-threatening incidents occur. This means in order for Guyana to progress as a nation, it's important that we plan for fulfilling the promise of wealth from oil and gas. We must have a skilled and or educated workforce to support the growth and diversification of the economy. Opportunities for a proper education are vastly reduced when there is a disabled adult or parent in the home. Now, the third and final consideration is brand competitiveness and sustainability. These things can only be impactful if companies are looking to build legacies for future generations. Therefore, standardization must not only glorify the company, but it must also seek to shift the mindset of its employees to see their overall value to the organization and the society. This is key because companies who can build a culture of safety and embed it into their organization can easily scale their companies without feeling the burden of strictly following the rules. Where there is a culture, it becomes quite routine to do the right thing, and also even easier to identify wrong practices. This gives the opportunity for companies to do what they do best while also working safely. The issue with the rhetoric of standardization at this time is it offers a company a corporate badge of honor, but in most cases does not filter to the lower employees who are at risk. Now I know what you're thinking. At this point in this presentation, I can only imagine your thoughts. And I'd really love to look at the comments, but I'll leave that until the question and answer segment. So, what is the opportunity here? Well, the tricky thing is most business owners and entrepreneurs do not have the personal integrity it takes to care about the welfare of their employees until it directly impacts them. This could be a very costly mistake to all Guyanese and our collective future. And so I delivered this presentation as the CEO of a company that has worked with clients to help them and their employees experience this mindset shift that I'm talking about through training and consulting, and to give you also an insight into things you can use, mindset, perceptions, ways of thinking that you can use to not only build on the competitive advantage of your companies, but also to consider the implications of your actions for our children's children. Understanding the lasting effect of investing in the safety culture within your organization requires the acceptance that standardization may only be the beginning. Safety has to become a national directive, in order for success to become lasting. While it's admirable to drive towards standardization and certification, this is like having a table with no legs to stand on, if not complemented with a thriving underlying culture shift. The top-down approach that is command-based with initiatives like this is premature for a country like ours, in my own opinion. So, building an industry that usually takes 10 to 15 years in under 5 years, we are likely to get it wrong the first few times. But this has the potential to have significantly slowed our momentum, if not attended to no. And so, what is going to do is prepare the nation for supporting the oil and gas industry through sustainable practices geared towards longevity and legacy building by ensuring the need for protecting those legacies are transferred to the workers most at risk. A cultural transformation and the agenda for building a robust safety culture into our most likely to compete companies and industries, where the people are seen as our most prized possessions, will have a ripple effect across the society if given due attention now. And I, as a safety professional, have studied this from the perspective of systems theory, and I've spent countless hours applying these techniques that I've learned to many trainings my company has offered to over 350 men and women. What I do is help them experience the shift in mindset from safety being a company problem to making it an individual problem. Ultimately, my success with my company stems from the ability to help at risk employees understand and internalize the potential impact an incident can have on them as an individual, but also the impact it can have on their families and the society as a whole. This has been the most effective way we've found to getting companies their return on the investment for training and our services. So, having partnered with the international organizations that can offer the best in class information, but also tailor it specifically to the Guyanese context for the most cultural impact, is what we do at our company. Ultimately, we want you to take advantage of every opportunity the oil and gas sector has to offer, leading to the transformation of Guyana, but sustainable development requires more than just a top-down approach to creating a competitive advantage. It must be a holistic approach that is internalized by all stakeholders. Having spent the last 3 years practicing this, I know it can be replicated in any company and in the country as a whole. So the opportunity is there for the taking. I really do hope we are able to grab hold of it, because if we don't, we all will suffer. Of course, my company is always here to help, and I can't tell you all the amazing results we've gotten for entrepreneurs and management professionals, just like those of you on this call struggling to find new opportunities from the oil and gas sector. We also offer site safety services for those companies who want to focus on doing what they do best and leaving the heavy lifting of safety to us. But today, I'd like to also thank Gcci for inviting me on this panel and wait for your questions at the end.
Thank you very much for sharing on safety and safeguarding the well-beings of individuals. And I can already see quite a few questions coming in. I look forward to more persons really putting in some questions that we'll be able to deal with at the panel. So Latoya, I'll see you back in the panel very shortly. I will now be joined, and again, a reminder to submit your questions so that they can be dealt with this evening. But I will now be joined by Mr. Timothy Tucker. He's a current Senior Vice President of the Georgetown Chamber and the CEO of Ridopest Inc., a company that has been in the pest control industry for 25 years and holding multiple certifications in the field. He's also founder and director of Sandip Waste Management and the CEO of Freights Guyana Inc., a cleaning and distribution company in Guyana. He is here in his capacity this evening, though, as the chairman of the Trade and Investment Committee of the Chamber of Commerce, and has held that position for the past 5 years. Timothy, welcome. Welcome to our studio. Welcome to the discussion this evening. And I know that you will be talking to us specifically about the opportunities in the oil and gas sector. Your latest company speaks to the opportunities that are coming about, so we're looking forward to hearing more about that from you as well. Over to you, Timothy.
Thank you, Vishnu. Well, my job this evening is kind of simple because everybody is well aware that there are numerous opportunities in the oil and gas sector, especially for the private sector of the country. Primarily, the oil and gas industry is an extractive industry. So it's similar to the gold and diamond industry, similar to the bauxite industry, as in terms of it extracts raw material from the ground. The only difference is the oil and gas industry operating in Guyana is primarily offshore. There are presently 8 oil blocks that have exploration licenses attached to them by various companies. One of those big blocks that everybody is aware of is the Starboard Block, which is prime operator there is ExxonMobil with Hess and 2 other companies that are partner with them. They have found 18 discoveries of oil in that block over the last 5 years, which is phenomenal worldwide. The oil and gas development is creating opportunities for the private sector. Small, medium, and large enterprises are getting themselves involved in the oil and gas sector value chain. But not only the value chain for the oil and gas sector is important, there's the non-oil and gas sectors. Those supporting sectors play a very important role in the development of the oil and gas industry in terms of support. And every person, every business in this country will feel the ripple effects of the oil and gas industry into every sector. How do we develop ourselves from those sectors? What will define us in the future. Large businesses and enterprises are going into partnerships. They're forming joint ventures so that they can jump into that curve. One of our previous presenters spoke about 5 years to an oil and gas, a rush to oil and gas. Right. Normally it takes 20 years. Some companies are in there for over 100 years. The way that you can get yourself higher up the food chain in terms of the supply chain is finding the correct partner, finding the correct niche that can bring 2 companies together and 2 reputable companies that are willing to cooperate, form a joint venture, and get into the oil and gas sector. Those you have to be careful. Due diligence is required from both parties, and organizations like the Georgetown Chamber of Commerce, with our numerous memorandum of understanding with Aberdeen, Newfoundland, and Canada, and I think we have one with Suriname. We have various MOUs with India, with Cuba. All of those can help you get that connection that you need to form the correct joint venture so that you can be part of the oil and gas industry and coming at a different level. Of course, we can't just want to jump in on top of anything. We generally have to look at the sector and analyze what are our capabilities, realizing that the oil and gas sector is one that is very demanding in terms of its standards and, of course, its safety, which both of our previous speakers alluded to. Safety is paramount because these are people that are working offshore, so the lack of safety is detrimental to the industry, and that's why they do not, for any mark of it, do not play with safety. In terms of standards, that is what separates you from your competitors. That is what makes your business, right, unique. That's what takes you to the next level. That's what puts you on the international market and be competitive around the world. Bringing your company up to the oil and gas sector, to the standards of the oil and gas sector, where these companies are tier 1, which is the either operators or tier 1, tier 2, or tier 3 subcontractors, you are bringing yourself automatically to the export level of any service, any product that you get once you get to that level. ISO certification, or as was mentioned earlier, American Petroleum Institute certification, any one of those things, and even your safety certifications can help you achieve that. And the opportunities are numerous. There, as I mentioned earlier, there's direct and indirect, and also induce impact into the sector. Some of the direct opportunities would be the oil and gas operators, oil and gas services, which are very technical and are usually undertaken by companies that have been far up the food chain and long years into that type of service. And it's very difficult for Guyanese who are now into the sector to even get to that level. Then there's the indirect impact, which is financial services, transportation, downstream, manufacturing, warehousing, security, legal and counseling, shipping, information technology, telecommunications, construction. All these things are your indirect impact. So if you have a business that looks or is part of one of those areas that I would have called just now, very likely that you will sooner or later, if you bring your standards up, you will definitely have an impact, an indirect impact of the benefits from the oil industry. Going on to the induce. Now, once you have catering services, construction company, warehousing space, all these things now have to be built. Catering company has to get products, goods, agricultural products, and that's where your induced impact comes in. Those are the tourism industry. So when the guys are off the rig, or the expats who come into the country, or even the locals who have now gone to a different level of terms of their finances, want somewhere to go and they don't want to leave the country, then the tourism sector locally has all the opportunities in the world to provide the ideal eco or vacation spot locally for those people. The agriculture sector is very important because you will be supplying food for that industry, and food security, as we know, it's greater than oil, because you have to get food to survive. But the quality of the food that you supply is very important. It's very important that we accept and look at traceability and work our way through how do we improve good manufacturing practices, get your agro-processing facility up to a HACCP certification. These are all things that will benefit you throughout the oil and gas sector locally. It also brings you up to a level where you can start exporting to the Caribbean and to the rest of the world, because you would have attained a certain level of certification. If you go through the line, infrastructure, national security, consumer services, healthcare, education, media, real estate. Now, all these companies that are coming need office space, need places to stay. So there is the construction. They have to construct these things in order to facilitate these industries. Now, the construction industry will boom. So the laborers will come on site, cement, steel, engineering services, all are part of the opportunities that exist in a developing of an oil and gas economy. We cannot, of course, rely simply and straightforward on an oil and gas economy. All sectors have to grow. We have to improve across the board, or we will end up with what they would call the Dutch disease and things like that. Sustainable tourism, food and agriculture, health services, I would have mentioned, and housing. The private sector will need transformation in order to respond to the opportunities that we know that is coming in the oil and gas sector. Business in Guyana, and I hate to say this, it is a problem with setting up businesses, getting permits, getting you simple things as electricity. These are the problems that cause us to have the problem with our doing business index, the ease of doing business. So high interest rates to the bank. Now, oil and gas sector, we know sometimes they're 30, 60, 90 days for payments. And when you have to finance your business, you have to be able to finance that business, and financing that business at a 16%, 14, 16% commercial rate is where the trouble comes. So financing for this sector is a great opportunity. If you can team up or bring more financial companies or banks into the country to boost that, it is one of the key ways that we can look forward to going forward in that. Joint ventures that I would have mentioned, stimulation from the diaspora in terms of investment strategies. So families that have some kind of money overseas that want to invest into somebody's business and a farm here to bring them to that standard so that they can start supplying the sector, because every part of the economy will have a greater demand because there will be more people taking things out of the sector, demand for it, people using products, using services, and there will always be space for new services to be added on. So if there are 10 farmers, and then the oil and gas industry and the supporting industry, the hotels, the restaurants are taking up all of the produce, then there's opportunities for more farmers. So every single business that we have, small, micro enterprises, medium and large businesses, the opportunities are there. They're ripe for the taking, and I encourage them. Join the Georgetown Chamber of Commerce. Our members have access to a lot of information, a wealth of knowledge, a wealth of mentors. Dr. Doerga, who've been in the private sector for a number of years, that can lend you an ear to listen to your idea and to even advise you going forward. The chamber is, I'm sorry that I took so long to join the chamber, and I regret that I took so long. So now I'm happy, and I'm always here to share that knowledge that in so many parts of my business, issues that I had, the chamber was able to help solve those problems for me. And so that is some of the ideas that I have in terms of the opportunities in the oil and gas sector. I hope I would have given you some thoughts, some ideas, some bulbs in some people's head to light up.
Thank you very much, Timothy. And it's a key point for businesses out there to realize the value of being a member of the chamber. I know in the beginning, when we were on the outside, or when we were encouraging people to join the chamber, we many times hear, well, what are they going to do, and all of this. But the chamber is made up of its members, and the chamber can only be as good as the quality of the members. So if you want the organization to be better, get on board and contribute your efforts as well. And I'm very proud of the work that you have been doing at the chamber, Timothy, the passion with which you present the issues that are faced by the business community. I think we all owe you a debt of gratitude, because many of the people who benefit the most might actually be outside of the chamber, not even knowing the amount of work that is being put in by people like yourself.
Thank you. I mean, I trade and investment is a far away from pest control. So,
and it's all voluntary, right? And most of the time, we are working to make sure that the entire business community benefits from the efforts. Just one note I wanted to add to Timothy's presentation is that the bulk of the revenue that's going to be streaming into Guyana, it is estimated that just around 10% will actually be coming directly from the oil and gas industry. Nearly 90% of the revenue will actually go directly to our government in the form of royalties and profit sharing. So also keep your eyes on how the government is going to be investing the money. Where is it going to go in terms of budget, in terms of large projects? Because some of our companies may not be able to be, pivoted to be able to get into oil and gas, but we might be able to serve, and it's actually the bigger chunk of the income that's going to stream through our government.
Well,
so
I actually cut my presentation short there. I was going to go into the government spending because, as I would have mentioned, the indirect and the direct are just one part of the spending. There's also increased government spending because with the money coming from the oil and gas sector, the government will have to develop infrastructure and invest into the country in order to accommodate that industry. And of course, we know that the general increase in local demand is the third and final area for the opportunities in oil and gas.
Very good. So let me bring on back our panelists, and we're joined now by Latoya and Syeid. Welcome back. And we're going to jump straight into questions because I can see the questions streaming in now, and we do just have about 15 minutes. I may ask the team for a few more minutes if possible, but let's get started. The first question that the panelists should be able to see on the screen as well comes from Gary Thompson, who's also a chamber member. And the question is actually specifically for the GNBS. How does ISO 9001 standards benefits the services industry that are innovating new service content? So, Syeid, I can see that you're muted at the moment, so you'll have to unmute and then come on.
Yeah. So in answering the question, Dr. Doerga, the ISO 9001 standard is highly customer focused, and therefore precedence is given to meet and exceed customer requirements. However, if there are legal requirements governing any operations, then that takes overall precedence. The standard actually guarantees consistency in the way company do business and places much emphasis on continuous improvement. So it's all about the experience, the customer satisfaction experience, as it relates to the ISO 9001, which plays a very crucial role because you always want that buy-in or that return purchase when it comes to your service. So if one customer may have a bad experience, you may have 90 customers that have a good experience. But from the time you have one bad review, that may influence your business. And today, in the modern world, social media plays a crucial role when it comes to the operations of any business.
And I'm going to jump in very quickly, and we're going to take these questions because I see more streaming in, and we want to answer as many as possible. But I'm going to quickly switch on my past chair of the Guyana National Bureau of Standards hat for a second. And I think the key reason why companies should really be looking at ISO 9001, for example, because that's all about quality management, is because the companies that are coming into this country don't know Action Invest. They may not know Chronoco. They might not know Ridopes as well. But when they see that you have been third-party certified, they know that some external entity came in and verified that you say that you have systems and that you're operating according to your systems, because Timothy and myself and Latoya are going to tell you all the fantastic things about our company, but that is expected. We get paid to do so. But when a third party comes in to actually verify if you're doing these things, that is what is valued by these external companies coming in, because they're looking to invest quite a bit in our economy, and they do want to invest it with companies that they can depend on, because as Latoya mentioned, this is not in Guyana, they would say a play industry. This is people's lives that are at risk. If anything goes wrong, people's lives get lost. The next question that followed up there actually is, how can I and others reach out to your training programs? And this was actually the GNBS program. So any feedback on that side?
Yeah, before I answer that question, I may comment on the statement you just made.
Mm-hmm.
So when it comes to competence as well, persons look at, they may want to know GNBS if we do have the competence when it comes to offering or training or consultancy services. So over the years in GNBS, we would have been in partnership with many regional and international organizations with not just attachments and trainers program, but many other aspects. And some of these organizations that we are affiliated with is From the regional Sunpint, we have CrossQ, and we have COPANT, which is the Latin American standards organization. In the region, we have in the US, UL, ASTM. We even went across the globe. We partner with countries like Malaysia, India. So it's not that, at the GNBS, it's not that we're perfect, but we also have a learning process, which we partner with all these agencies and organizations. Now, in answering the question that's posted there, presently our training programs are virtual. So if anybody's interested, what they could do is they could reach out to Miss Ramrati Karan on 219-0064 to 66 extension 223, or they could send a email to rkaran at gnbsgy.org. At the GNBS, we also have a 24-hour customer support service, and that's via WhatsApp, and you can WhatsApp 692 GNBS. I'll repeat 692 GNBS, and the number is 4627. So if anybody is interested in our training or consultancy program, we'd gladly be able to assist on all the contact information. You can also check out our page on Facebook at GNBSGY for further details.
Thank you, Syeid. And I can't help but do a little plug for the chamber as well. Anyone who is interested in also finding out from a private sector perspective the type of training that is available, all you need to do is to go to gcci.gy, click on the members tab, and you will see our membership sorted out by category. And if you are interested to understand what type of education is provided from a private sector perspective, you see all the companies listed there. You can just click on any one of the companies to get the contact info, but you will also see a range of other companies that you can benefit from as well. So please make sure that you take a look at the website. There is a ton of very fantastic information, useful information there that you can benefit from. I do see that we have a question here about the requirements to apply at these companies. One basically says, Christina is asking, does a biology degree count? And very, very, very helpful here. We see Jillian is actually answering that question on our behalf this evening. And she's saying that she works with Georgetown Oilfield Partners. And to answer your question, possibly for a marine life position, marine biologists are used by marine preservation companies, I think that should be, to decide on where to operate or drill. Does anyone want to add anything else to that on the science type of degrees?
I would like to add to that, Dr. Doerga. Actually, we do have a past student who did have a biology degree. She's currently the HSC coordinator at Halliburton. So there is the option also for you to branch out into a fantastic career in occupational safety and health, one that's growing and definitely one that requires quite a number of safety professionals within the coming years to actually manage the emerging industry as well as those other non-oil and gas areas. So you have something there, Christina.
I definitely also I would definitely say that in biology, definitely will look into the laboratory fields. A lot of the labs that have to run testing, especially when the country is in desperate need of better medicine, especially for the oil and gas sector. And I'm pretty sure that we'll be able to, she'll find a job very easily in the near future.
And the next question comes from Yogesh, and it's, what is the advantage of the GCCI over the CL, should be BD, because it's a Center for Local Business Development. He heard that they're doing great work over there, and I can confirm they are doing great work. But to answer the question, I would pose this to Timothy. Is there an advantage? And maybe if it's not that we're comparing apples to apples, what's the difference?
All right, so the CLDB is a portal that basically sets you up, tells you go to the portal, you register, and you fill up all your bio information from your company standpoint, And when there are tenders out there, you see the tenders. There is no one or the other. They both complement each other. In terms of the GCCI, where the CLDB comes in and offers training, and all these are things I would advise everybody to register with the Center for Local Business Development. But the chamber, the interactive nature and the ability to understand business in the local economy is where the chamber triumphs everyone. The chamber has over 400 or just about 400 members. We are with the legislators. We are mandated by the constitution, the country. There's an act of parliament that, just like the mayor and city council has an act that governs them, the GCCI has an act where we have the power to reach out to government agencies, ministries, ministers, and basically get that connection and solve problems, rectify issues, and help the business community. I'm not saying unlike the CLDB, we are also a lot of the oil companies are members of the chamber. So you actually have events, social meetings, committee meetings that some of these companies sit on. Our connection with our overseas partners, which are Newfoundland and Labrador, the Noya and NEA, our connection with Aberdeen, our connections with our trade facilitation councils that the chamber have with Cuba. We sit constantly with the Cuban government. I think it's the chamber in Cuba and the ambassador for Cuba. Also, we sit with the ambassador for India at the Trade Facilitation Council. So the benefits of joining the Georgetown Chamber of Commerce are numerous. It's not limited to the oil and gas industry. It is a wide sectorial, even though our name is the Georgetown Chamber of Commerce. The powers invested in the chamber are national powers. So we are a broad, all sectors, all parts of the economy we deal with.
And I think, one of these days we can probably do a show about how we finally need to transition from the Georgetown Chamber to the Guyana Chamber of Commerce, but that's a complete
that's a whole different conversation.
But, I would also really like to encourage people to join the CLBD if you are in business. Our company, for example, because we do work we do work in the industry, was actually afforded the support to become ISO compliant. We're now in the process of becoming certified, and there are many other companies like Farfan and Mendes, like Geissens, MMC Security. So you don't necessarily need to be an oil and gas company to get the support. If you fall within the supply chain, you can benefit from that support, and also from an OSHA compliant, your occupational safety and health perspective. They also provide training in that respect to get your manuals up in order. So please, people, take advantage of these situations, these opportunities that are arising. Another question from Gary, and this one seems to be, this one is directed at Latoya. Academic salaries and fringe benefits are not translating into the sustained high performers. So Latoya, in your experience, what are those factors that lead to peak performance in the workforce, taking the oil and gas sector into consideration? I know Gary always has fantastic essay type questions for us also.
I love Gary's question. Gary, one of the things that we have found leads to peak performance for individuals who are working not only in oil and gas, but generally, it's an understanding and the fundamental integration of safety and the workforce. So when employees are engaged in occupational health and safety and they understand the importance of it and the implications of not doing the right thing, it tends to have an all-encompassing effect where they work better, they produce better, but also they work in a safer manner, ultimately saving the company a lot of dollars, as well as saving you a lot of downtime. It's very difficult. One of the most trying things a company can face when it comes to non-compliance and non-conformity, and then having incidents within the organization, is actually when they have to train new employees into the position, having old employees who already know how the system works and who have integrated with the system and who also understand the importance of the culture within the organization is what really drives peak performance, specifically where it has to do with the oil and gas sector as well as other sectors where we have been operating and we've been doing business.
Very good. Thank you, Latoya. And then we have another one directed here from Kemal to Mr. Tucker. How is the City Chamber currently working to mitigate barriers to business for locals in the oil sector? Is the government showing that it is receptive to your concerns about barriers to business?
Well,
I don't know if
I
you
think that's a direct question to me. So it's a we are there to mitigate the barriers to trade in every sector, not just the oil and gas sector, but the support is needed from government. This is a very new government. We have not gone into the debates or to the conversations with this government on those topics just as yet from the chamber's standpoint. We are still in the process of courtesy calls. But definitely, we will engage the government. I think a greater presence of local business community on the advisory board, the local content advisory board, will definitely mitigate some of the barriers to business for locals in the oil and gas sector. It generally, how we approach it at this point in time from the chamber is actually to marry companies with matchmaking services, so to speak, so that we can jump those barriers. But in terms of breaking the barriers, that's a different approach. And the only thing that breaks barriers in the oil and gas industry is standards. And of course, once your company is up to standards, you will break the barriers and get into the oil and gas industry. But when artificial barriers are placed, those are the ones that we really have to mitigate from from a legal standpoint, where legislation comes in to move the artificial barriers that are preventing local businesses from entering into the oil and gas sector. So I hope that answers the question. The government, it has shown its ability to put it on the front burner, the local content legislation. They have made a huge step by putting an advisory committee, which is led by the private sector, so to speak, Mr. Sham Nokta, who is the head of the Ghana Manufacturing and Services Association. But because the president alluded to it being a broader local content covering multiple industries, I believe there's a need to have a few more private sector-based organization representing on that committee. But all in all, we have the Georgetown Chamber of Commerce has the confidence in Mr. Nokta to represent the private sector.
And I would say that just to add to that, we have been consulted on past local content policies. And the one thing that has remained in common is that locals shall be given preferential treatment where, comma, it's always that comma, and it says where the capacity exists, right? So it doesn't mean that because we're locals, we're all Guyanese, that automatically everything is going to be handed to us. Again, we come back to we need to be able to deliver safely and up to the standard that's required. I think one of the key things that you mentioned as well, Timothy, is in other countries, it's easy for the suppliers to the oil and gas industry to work with a standard 60 or 90-day credit terms that those companies sometimes demand of them. In Guyana, that's not the norm. Generally we go maybe up to 30 days, but with the volume of business coming our way, it is very tough to, provide the whole year's worth of sales as one single credit note for 90 days. So we do need to really push for getting those barriers lowered.
But definitely adding to it too is our ability as a private sector in the country, right, to really return our money back to the private sector. Too often we jump and we send for something from some other country rather than buying at our local stores, or actually we go into a supermarket and we may see a local product and we said no, but we're not giving them the opportunity We're not trying that product to bring their, I mean, the only way that they can bring, both of our panelists would be able to contribute to that everything that we have spoken about in terms of standards and certification costs money.
Yeah.
And the only way to get money is if the private sector has confidence in itself. So you have to purchase in-house. We have to support each other's business. There should never be a segregation or anything of the sort in terms of, buying from here or buying from there. Local first. Just like how we're asking the government to put locals first, we as the private sector should also put local first.
So any brief comment on local first, because you are the guardian of our standards in Guyana?
Yeah, so let me just comment on what Mr. Tucker would have said. Many companies, local companies, indirectly would be benefit from the oil and gas sector. But when it comes to the consultancy, what we would want to advise these companies, the local one especially, is that if you're in the process of in the consultancy to get accreditation or certification ready, is that it's not going to be an easy step for each different business. It's a different criteria, depends. Well, the ISO standard, it caters for all companies or whatever products or service you have. So it's for you to continue that consultancy process for you to reach to the certification stage and not back out. I mean, nothing don't happen overnight, but it's going to take some time since this is all new to us in Guyana. Also, even when the companies would have achieved certification, what you may want to do is to continue improving your process so you can maintain that certification, so you could benefit from the supply chain in the sector. You may not want to fall out or, lose your certification. So it's very important that as businesses in Guyana that, we try to maintain our certification and even our process of getting certified, that we stick to it and continue to reach that level.
All right. So final couple of questions. All of you have
Mr.
referred.
Mr. Ibrahim,
Yes.
Mr. Ibrahim, I just wanted to
Yeah.
ask a question. As far as the Bureau standards is concerned, are you guys offering any post certification services to support these companies in their journey?
What we do is that basically we assist companies to get certification or accreditation ready. We wouldn't be able to go through past that process. So we're just assisting them in the process in terms of consultancy and assisting them with their gap analysis to take them to that level. So from that level now, they will have to seek a third party to get them certified.
So I hope that helps, Latoya. I think I just wanted to touch on the partnership aspect. All of you mentioned the partnerships that you've engaged in order to develop your own capacity. If you can give me just one reason, because I know in Guyana, many people start their businesses and they treat it like their baby from the beginning to the end, and they sometimes never grow it because they're afraid to take on partners, to take on risks, to scale, because what if something goes wrong? All of you mentioned partnering. Even the GNBS is partnering across the Caribbean. Can you give me just one reason, one good reason why we should partner? And I'll get started with Timothy on this.
I think if you're the time it takes for you to learn the entire process, right? You can learn. It's like a upload, like a video game or your phone, your ISO updates. So you get up one and you reprogram your phone, and tomorrow morning you're now up to standard. So if I got a partner, I have a business. Let's say I have a fabricating business, and I suddenly took a partner that is internationally certified, I automatically fall underneath his certification, and my business will have to fall underneath his certification. I'll suddenly have the years of experience, the certifications, and everything that comes with it. So it's a win-win situation, and a lot of times it's the financial or the technical capacity that you're building that now brings you to a different level and a more competitive level.
And so it's a faster route. Latoya, your big reason for partnerships? If Latoya is still with us. Or in the meantime, Syeid, the biggest reason for the GNBS partnering?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, nobody's ever perfect. So it's always a learning process and opportunity for improvement. So by us partnering with various organizations, both regionally and internationally, it helps us to better ourselves on what we do, and it's always a learning experience on the curve to increase what you do better. So just to sum it up, it's always good to have, a third party or outsider perspective. In summing, I know this is out of the context, but also to sum up what Latoya would have asked me, at the GMBS, we also have our auditing services where we would go into companies and be able to assist them in auditing their quality management system. So that answers our question with the post certification aspect. We do
Very,
have a auditing service that we provide to companies.
very good, very good. And Latoya, I hope you can hear me now. But what's your big reason for partnering?
Well, our partnering really stems from the fact that there are a lot of standards and best practices out there, but we do believe that there's cultural context that is important. So we believe we bring to the table the uniquely specific Guyanese reference and a way to kind of marry not only our expectations for what the industry should look like and the expectations, the international best practices, but also to be able to bring it down to the layman level where it is not only able to be understood but applied seamlessly into the organization. So when we partner, we specifically look to companies. For example, our partnership or our membership with the National Safety Council and our membership with the British Safety Council. These two organizations gives us the range of training programs that we are able to deliver, but they also give us the opportunity uh, to deliver these programs in ways that are applicable to Guyana, applicable to the people of Guyana, and in ways that can be taken and used within the organization effectively.
Very good. And then the final question is going to Timothy, and then we're going to take just 1 minute for closing thoughts. But Timothy, the effectiveness of the relationship between the CLBD, the GCCI, and Go Invest in fostering the development of potential local farms, how effective is it? And is there encouragement for sustainability in such farms?
Definitely, the collaboration, the relationship between the three organizations are very close. We, I think, Go Invest and GCCI on several occasions fielded trade missions overseas, held conferences or seminars at OTC and other. And GCCI and CLDB are very close. We do workshops together. So the relationship between the three entities in fostering development is always on point, right? For domestic firms, we continuously lobby for the benefits of training, access from GCCI members, access to training from the CLDB. Go Invest, our relationship, we have collaborating relationships where we meet quarterly to iron out any issues that businesses have. So we have a working relationship and the potential to help develop local businesses. We were even Go Invest, GCCI, among others of the private sector, GMSA, held Gaitai, which was a Guyana Trade and Investment exhibition where we were training local manufacturers, getting them up to standard so that they're export ready. And then we were bringing through Caribbean Export and Development Agency foreign buyers in to boost our local manufacturing sector. So there are many, many programs that the three organizations run. May not all be at one time together, but partnerships with each other that encourage and helps to sustain the success for firms. I think the final part of that question was, does room for improvement exist within the relationship? That's a no-brainer. There's always room for improvement. GCCI is not an organization that is stagnated. It's a young organization. When I said young as in term of representative, when I feel it is very young when I'm one of the oldest there, right? and I'm under 45, but the organization, even though it's over 100 years old, right? The next generation, and the gentleman who asked the question could very well be the next president of the chamber, but we will never know unless he joins. So I think that's where I would leave that conversation at this point.
Very good, very good. So in the order that, and we have Daryl as well, really thanking you for your view that you expressed as well. We often insist on local development and local force, yet we support very little, local entities. So it's something that we do have to put our money where our mouth is. We can't keep talking local content, but when we go to the supermarket, we don't support the local products, So we do have to get serious about that. And you can see behind me on this way, I love Guyana. When we go shopping, we need to have that in mind, right? Closing comments, we're going to take, maximum a minute, and I'll get started with the same order that we actually kicked off the show. Syeid, your closing comments?
Well, I'd just like to encourage businesses out there that, the oil and gas sector has many benefits and they could benefit through the supply chain, and it will be a good opportunity for economic growth for these businesses. So they may not want to miss out on that. So I do encourage them to get certification ready.
Thank you very much, Syeid. And Latoya, your thoughts?
Building on what Saeed has said, certification is critical and important. Standardization is important. However, it has to be married with mindset modification and cultural change. That is the only way you're going to have lasting impact. It's the only way we're going to be able to build legacies, and it is one of the best ways for us to build a sustainable economy for generations to come.
Thank you. And I think the whole topic of cultural change is definitely going to be one that we need to treat with on a separate webinar in the future, because it could very well be why one of the wealthiest countries on paper, because the only thing Guyana did not have before oil and gas was oil and gas, with such a small, minuscule population of 750,000. So, per capita, on paper, we're the wealthiest country. However, for 50 years, we've struggled to turn that into reality, and culture has a big part to play with that. So, Timothy, your closing thoughts?
Well, my closing thoughts would definitely be that it was a privilege to have the opportunity to present here this evening with such a great array of panelists. Both panelists would have touched on the two most important parts of the oil and gas sector, which is standards and safety. And from the GCCI standpoint, right, relationships and businesses relationships. And if you have to understand your net worth is as great as your network, right? So GCCI is networking, right? And if you want to get into any industry, or you want to get your industry up, and there's so many partners all over the world, so many opportunities that are out there outside of the oil and gas industry, in the agriculture, and all the other sectors, mining, you can get yourself into those industries. Oil and gas, as Vishnu said earlier, 90% of the money is going to go to the government, right? But then the government will have to spend it on infrastructure projects, various different investment into the local economy, and that's where you will benefit, because very few of us around the world can do deep sea pipe laying and umbilicals and risers and connectors and FPSOs and things like that. And it's highly unlikely that we will contribute to that part of the direct segment. But in a parting word for the entire country, I would urge the government. I have seen the budget. We welcome the private sector, the so-called private sector budget. But I would have asked that the government address interest rates, right? Commercial interest rates, because that is a bugbearer for development of the private sector. Because there's no development bank. There are no banks that give us the collateralizing lending that is taking place in the country is very burdensome for the private sector. So it is very important that the government will be able to, with central bank, mediate the lower interest rates for the business community so we can be more competitive in our own country.
Very good. Thank you very much, Timothy, Syeid, Latoya. Thank you very much for taking the time out this evening to really share your knowledge on behalf of the Georgetown Chamber of Commerce and Industry and the Entrepreneurship Committee. I would like to really thank you for making this effort. I know that we had quite a number of people joining us live, and I also thank you for your attendance. If I have missed any of your questions, I plead for your forgiveness, but I'm sure that our Secretariat team is going to comb through all the comments and provide any feedback if they need to get on back to the panelists to get further feedback. I'm sure that will be done. And I thank you for following what we do here at the Chamber of Commerce. This is all done to make sure that we have a private sector that is very vibrant, that's very robust, and can really be that engine of growth that we continuously speak about. So to my guests, thank you very much for, again, investing the time here this evening. I look forward to us having further discussions in the future. And I trust that you all have a very good evening and a safe evening as well. Good night.
You too. Good night.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.